Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie. Today I have a Halloween compilation video for you. Cats, skeletons, spiders, and ghosts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and a thumbs up is very much appreciated. Okay, our first set of DIYs are black cats, perfect for Halloween, all with a coastal flair. The first project we're going to do today is going to be a wall hanging to go above my coffee bar. I'm going to use one of these little square signs from the fall section at the Target dollar spot. They're $3. They're really great, thick, two-sided signs. And then I'm going to use this little black cat from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just using my heat gun and a scraper to pop off that jack-o'-lantern face. That is the top piece of that sign. I don't really want that for this project, so I'm just going to pop that off. Now, I do want the pumpkin, but I thought it might be easier if I separate that so that I can paint those separately. These two were definitely glued on a lot stronger than just the jack-o'-lantern face, and I kind of do put the pumpkin in the same spot. I guess I could have left it on there because it was definitely glued on really tight, especially like up at the stem area. But I just keep using my heat gun. The heat gun works really well to help take these signs from the Dollar Tree apart. If you don't have one, I would highly recommend picking one up. That one I got on Amazon for like $10 and I love it. I'll post a link below. Now on our little cat here, we have the two holes from where you can hang it. And I'm just going to fill that with some nail hole filler. I'm trying that instead of speckle to see if it works a little better. It did a pretty good job. And I am planning on putting this little black cat on that square sign. I want to make a nice sign to go above my coffee bar area. I have kind of a small coffee bar in my house because I have one of those water machines that heats your water, but it also has a built-in Keurig. So I use that for my coffee every day. So I kind of have a unique area, but I like to decorate it nonetheless. So I'm just using chalk paint by Waverly in the color of ink and going all over our little cat to make him a nice black cat for Halloween. I love black cats and I think this one's really cute. So once I get him painted, it really only takes about one coat of the chalk paint on that raw wood from the Dollar Tree. And then there was a few chips in that pumpkin from me trying to get it apart. So I was just using a little of that nail hole filler to fill that in and a little sanding. And that one's ready to go. I thought I didn't really want an orange pumpkin. I wanted it to look really coastal. That kind of goes with my theme. I'm just mixing together a little agave and ivory for a nice blue, light blue color. And I think this makes it really coastal. We're going to have this little black cat like he is at the beach for Halloween. So I used that light blue color to color in the pumpkin. And then I wanted to kind of mark off the sections. So I actually use like a mint green. I do end up changing the color of that just to kind of define the sections of my pumpkin. And now I'm ready to distress. I really like distressing things because I think it looks really coastal. So I'm just using one of those chunky brushes from the Dollar Tree and some ivory chalk paint. You'll notice I kind of go around the edges first and make sure I get all of those. And like the eyes and the nose and the details. And then I go back with a baby wipe and wipe off the excess. And I also kind of go all over because I want like a nice rustic feel to my kitty cat. And I wanted him to be still kind of black. I think I kind of made him a little gray. So I'm going back and forth with just a little bit of that ink and the ivory and getting the right level of distressing. I think I may have wiped off a little bit too much. Sometimes you can do that with a baby wipe, but that's okay because you can always just distress it again. And now I'm using a few of these little wood dominoes from the Dollar Tree. They're going to be helpful when putting the sign together. And I wanted one of those to be blue, and you'll see why in just a second. Now to give this an extra coastal feel, I'm going to go around that square sign that I got at the Target dollar spot. And I'm just going to glue some of this Dollar Tree rope, just with hot glue, all the way around the square just to give me a really nice rope border, and it's going to give my sign a little bit more of a coastal feel. They have these signs in square and I think rectangle. I don't think they have a circle in the Target dollar spot. But again, they're really good signs. One side is black and one side is like a light wood color. And I'm going to use the light wood color sign. I think that looks like a nice beachy color of wood. So once I get that all glued down, I'm going to just leave the hanger on there, and then I'm going to go around with my flame and just burn off the little excess little pieces of string that are hanging off my rope. And I can start thinking about how I'm going to put my cat together. Now, this is why I wanted to do one of the dominoes blue, because I wanted it to shine through and give my little black cat some blue, coastal blue eyes. Not green for this kitty cat. So I'm just trimming that domino. Those things are so easy to cut. They're kind of like popsicle sticks, and then I'm just going to hot glue that on so I make sure that I get it lined up right. I want his eyes to be blue, but I don't want his nose to be blue. So I just glue that onto the back of my cat, but now it's a little off-sided. So I'm going to use a few more of those dominoes to glue to it, and then I'm going to glue those dominoes to my wood sign so that my cat will be level with that additional domino behind the eyes. I could have always painted the wood behind it blue too, but this was an easy way to get it in there perfectly. And then I want to give a little coastal touch to my blue pumpkin, so I'm just going to wrap the stem of the pumpkin with that twine from the Dollar Tree just to give that little pumpkin more of a finished look. And I have another domino there, you see, and I'm going to use that too so that I can attach this pumpkin to the front of the sign and it will be level too. I'm going to kind of put it there in front of the kitty cat. And so I am just going to hot glue that domino down and then hot glue the pumpkin to the bottom surfaces there. So now we have our little black cat. He's nice and distressed with his pretty blue eyes. We have our blue pumpkin, and then I thought I would use one of these little laser cutouts from the Dollar Tree. They're beautiful little wood cutouts and give my little pumpkin more of a coastal touch. So I'm going to use just a little seashell from my collection for the top of my pumpkin, and then I'm just going to hot glue on that little laser etched dolphin, just for a fun little decoration for the top of my pumpkin. And then I have a little area over here with nothing in it, so I thought I would just glue on a few seashells just for fun, just to make it look like our little black cat is visiting the beach. Then I just take some of that twine and I tie off like a super simple little bow. And I'm also going to attach that to the stem of the pumpkin just to give it a little extra detail. And it's looking super cute. I decided that I wanted to distress it a little bit more. You know me, I love distressing things. So I did give a little bit more distressing to my kitty cat. Now you'll see I have a rope, or beaded rope there from the Dollar Tree. I was so fortunate to find the wood beads at my Dollar Tree one time. And so I'm actually going to replace the hanger with these. I think that'll give it another little fun and detail. And I think the natural colored wood beads look really kind of coastal and fit with my feel too. Before I cut it off, I'm going to tie that piece off with twine so that it doesn't, like, all the beads don't fall off. And then I'm just going to use those existing holes that were on that sign and the twine that is on the beaded garland and tie that off. And we're going to make a little wood bead hanger for our sign. And I end up using wood beads in another project, and so I think the two of them like tied in nicely. And again, I plan to hang this above my coffee bar area, but you could hang this anywhere in your house. And if you don't have a coastal theme in your house, you could also always do this and make it a little bit farmhouse as well. Now, I didn't really like the little blue lines on my pumpkin. I didn't really think you could tell the sections of it. So I'm trying to use a white paint pen. I got this white paint pen at Walmart and it's terrible. I have a great set of paint pens that I got on Amazon, but of course I use all my white because I guess I use it all the time. So I just decided to take a little tiny brush and some of the ivory chalk paint and go in and kind of draw the sections on the pumpkin. And I also want to go around the edges too and just kind of give a sloppy little beachy coat just to bring out my pumpkin a little bit more. It looked just a little bit plain for my liking. And then just add a little tiny bit of distressing all over, and even to my little dolphin. I can't have him looking too perfect. And then just use a baby wipe to wipe off some of that little distressing. And our little black cat visits the beach sign, I think, is ready to go. What do you think? Okay, the next project. So I got this little cat at the Dollar Tree, and it's covered in stuff. So it's got like all this tinsel stuff all over it. Maybe it's decorated for like Day of the Dead. I'm not really sure. But I like the structure of the cat, and I thought I could do something really fun with this. So the first thing I have to do is try to expose the little cat cage that's underneath. And so the face was pretty easy to cut off. Now the ears are just like paper and cardboard like glued to the ears. So there was a little bit of cleaning up. I just cut up the middle, and then I just pull everything off the sides. Now the ears did have to be cleaned up. I used my heat gun and a little bit of a scraper to try to get off the paper and the glue that was on the ears, just to give me a good base coat. And you guessed it, I am gonna wrap this cat in rope. I kind of tried to research this to try to find somebody else that had done this project, and I couldn't find anything. So we're gonna do a rope cat here. I'm using this, it's like the smaller size rope from the Dollar Tree, and this is about how far one of those strands of rope will go. And when I go to switch off for a new one, I make sure that I'm on the back of my cat, and then I'm just kind of hot gluing it to itself to end it and to start my new one. And then I am going around until I run out of that second one. I end up using quite a few of these packages of rope for this project. Now my back's not looking as pretty, but that's okay as long as my front looks pretty even. I'm just gonna keep going up until I get to the neck of my little black cat. Now when I get to the head area, I'm gonna have to try a different strategy, because once I get to the ears, I'm not gonna be able to wrap it around. So I thought I would start in the middle, and it's not a circle, it's like an oval. So I'm gonna kind of do an oval, a round and around circle. As you can see, they're really flat. That way I can keep going around and around. And I'm just hot gluing it to the cage and hot gluing it to itself a little bit, and just making an oval that is the same shape as our little cat's head. And you'll notice when I wrapped the body part, I went and cut those little clips off the sides that were sticking out, so I didn't have to deal with those. Now the clips on the face, I just left them on there. I do trim off the little hanger there, and then I can wrap the little ears. So I'm gonna wrap the ears in that rope as well. My rope's not quite long enough, so I'm going to have to stop and start again here just for the tip. And my camera died. And the only thing you missed is that I did the other ear as well. Now I'm going in with some twine from Walmart just to fill in like any of the little areas there on the head area that were you could still kind of see a little bit of plastic and make it look finished. And then I'm going over with a flame to burn off any of the extra fibers sticking out of my rope. And I think it looks really cool like this. But, you know, I was like, this is a black cat project for Halloween. I thought about using some raffia for whiskers or a seashell for the nose, but I thought that might be too much. Now to make it black, I'm just going to use this chalk paint by Waverly in the color ink. And I did test on the back there to see if I could paint rope because I've never really painted rope before. Chalk paint works so well on so many things though. So I just go over the body. I'm using one of those chunky brushes from the Dollar Tree. I found that worked really well. It's going to give me a really nice distressed coat all over the surface of our little black cat. And I like the fact, you know, the rope makes it feel very coastal, but you can still see some of that shining through. But I did want it to be a black cat for sure. Now I need to make a base because I want this cat to stand up. So I'm going to use one of those bamboo cutting boards from the Dollar Tree and a ruler that I got for like $1/4 at Target. And so I found the middle of my board where I want to put my thing. Now I'm thinking about putting the ruler up through my kitty cat like that and then gluing that to my base somehow. But I didn't really like how unfinished and ugly the back of my cat was. Since I'm doing it, it's going to be standing up. You might be able to slightly see the back, and I like to have my projects look finished. So I'm just using some burlap that I had. It could be anything. And I am just hot gluing that to the back just to cover up, you know, all the places that I started new ropes. And then the head area is like a hot mess because I had to do several different techniques to get that all wrapped around the ears and the face. So I'm just using a couple pieces of burlap and just gluing those down, and that's going to give me a nice finished back for my little black cat. Now for the cutting board, I wanted to cut a groove that I could glue that ruler down into that I'm going to use to make a stand. So I just drilled a couple holes with a pretty large drill bit and then just kind of went from one to the next to try to make a little opening in the bamboo to put my ruler down. Now, my first attempt here, I used just a little bit of wood glue and a little bit of hot glue, and then I slide that ruler in, and then I let it sit to dry. I use a little bit more hot glue there to secure it, and I really wasn't sure about this, but I did weigh it and let it dry. It did not work. It fell apart immediately. And I think it's because the wood glue and the hot glue mixed together, and you're not really supposed to mix those glues together. They don't work that well together. So this time I'm going to try again. But this time I'm just going to use hot glue. So I hot glue the ruler down into my stand, and then I also use hot glue on the front and the back with the rope and between the rope and the thing, but I still felt it needed more support. So I'm just gluing a one of those giant Jenga blocks that I got at Five Below. It can be anything to the back, just because you're not going to be able to see it, but it's going to provide just a little bit more of a stability to my cat. I don't want it falling off. Now I want to do something with my bamboo cutting board. I want to decorate it, so I just went over with some school glue and a paintbrush, and then I am just covering the bottom of the sign in sand that I got at the Dollar Tree. So this black cat is definitely going to be at the beach. He's going to be like on a little sandy area, and I thought that was a fun way to bring in a coastal touch to this little black cat. Now once I get a layer of sand down, I find the best way to get that to stay is to use some of this spray glue that you can get at the Dollar Tree and to spray on top of that sand. And then I'm going to put just a little bit more sand down and spray the adhesive as I go. And that is going to glue that sand to my board and make it stick a little bit. Now I want to do some pumpkins. I picked up this blue pumpkin pick from the Dollar Tree. It's got 3 blue pumpkins on it, and they're like really pretty. They're made out of a velour material. I decided to use two different sizes, and then I decided some seashells might be fun too, since this little black cat is at the beach. I know it's kind of hard to see with my cat there in the way, but I'm just hot gluing 3 shells over on this side. 1 kind of lean up against him, and 2 kind of in front of him in the sand. And then on the other side, I'm gonna do the pumpkins. Now they were a little too bright turquoise, and the stems were a little too brown and plastic. So I'm just using a chunky brush and some ivory chalk paint. And I'm distressing that stem and then toning down that bright blue color and taking away any shininess that was on that velour and making these little pumpkins look super coastal. And I'm just going over with very little paint on that blue because I don't want to paint them white. I just want to slightly distress them. And I like that color. And so I'm just going to attach those to our sand with hot glue as well. And these are going to sit on the right side of our cat. So cute. I thought it was done. Then my son was like, no, 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 it needs a tail. It has to have a tail. And I'm like, oh, Lord, how am I going to make a tail for this thing? So I'm trying. Okay, so the tail was kind of hard. I'm using some of this, that thick floral wire from the Dollar Tree. And it doesn't matter what color. And I'm just kind of shaping what I think that the cat's tail would look like, making it nice and long. And I'm going to use that same rope to hot glue and start wrapping around my little wire tail. I wanted it to be wire because I wanted to be able to pose it and make it look like a nice cat tail, like the right shape and stuff like that. And this was a little challenging because there wasn't a lot to glue this to. I was having to kind of glue it to itself. And then I would wrap a couple and glue it to itself. The biggest problem with this tail was that I used so much rope on my cat that the only rope I had left were little scrap pieces. So I did have to start and stop several times on this tail, which probably took me a lot longer. So basically I'm gonna just try to make this tail out of the wire, and I will go in and paint that black as well to match my cat. And then I'm going to try to find a way to attach that to my cat because my son says this cat has to have a tail. I kind of agree, but I thought I was going to get away with it. Not with this kid around. Okay, so I got the whole thing wrapped in rope. My biggest problem was getting it to stay on there. I kept working. And then I'm using my heat gun and flame to kind of clean it up a little bit because I had a lot of hot glue going on. And then again, I'm using that ink chalk paint and I'm going on both sides and painting my little rope tail black. Now I'm going to use lots of hot glue to attach that to the side of my kitty cat. I'm kind of more on the back there. I do try to kind of pull it around on the side a little bit more. Just to try to make it where a cattail would come out. And I was actually able to attach it to my cat, but it was almost as difficult as the cat, that tail. But I finally got it together and looking good. Okay, that project is complete. You'll be able to see it at our final reveal. Now, next up, I found this great sign at the Target Dollar Spot. It was $3. It's a two-sided Halloween sign. Now, I wanted to make a personalized sign for my Black Cat coffee bar. So I am using fingernail polish remover and trying to take that paint off. I was really excited at first because it was working, right? And then it just stopped working. And I'm like, oh, well, I tried. I gave it my best effort. Because what I want to do is I want to have a black sign that I can use my Cricut and some vinyl from the Dollar Tree to make a personalized sign. But I'm going to have to cover up that white writing first, so I'm just going to go in and do one coat of ivory chalk paint all over the sign, and that's going to help me cover up the white writing on the sign when I go to make it black. So I know that's not great coverage, but it's enough coverage because I think we got a lot of the paint off. So I just dried that with my heat gun real quick, and then I'm going in with that chalk paint by Waverly in the color of ink and just going all over. I want a nice black canvas for our sign, and I'm leaving the ghost sign on the other side. I think that's really cute, and I could always just pull it out and switch it out if I want to make it a ghost sign. I love these signs from the Dollar Tree. They are great quality for $3. But again, you could always do this with any sign from the Dollar Tree. Now here is my Dollar Tree Cricut vinyl, and I did Black Cat Coffee Company, and then I have a little cat. I will look up the font on this and try to put that in the description if you want to make one the same. And then I've used a cat just from Cricut Design Space. They didn't really have one that was simple, and so I kind of took one they had that had a moon like on the forehead, and I used the contour to take out almost all the details except for the eyes and the nose and the whiskers. And then I'm going to use my favorite paper transfer paper. I will post a link below for that as well. I get that on Amazon to transfer that. And if you're wondering what I'm using there to weed it, it's one of the Cricut Bright Pads. It works really well on the white vinyl especially. Now, I don't want this to be a hanging sign, so I'm just going to unscrew the little hanger that was on the top and go ahead and slide that in so I know exactly where I want my vinyl to go. And I'm just going to line that up and peel off my transfer paper, and that is all I'm going to do with this sign. I wanted it to be the right colors, but super simple. I'm not really going to do anything coastal with this. The only thing that's really coastal is that light wood frame. So Black Cat Coffee Company. And then I just use a sanding block to kind of get that vinyl to stay down. And then I want it to be a standing sign, so I'm going to glue one of those Jenga blocks to the back as well, just to weigh that down. It can be anything, just to make it stand up on my coffee bar. Okay, the last project we're going to do today is a little pennant banner. I have like a shelf above my coffee bar, and it has like a little cabinet that opens for my coffee lids, and I like to decorate that with a little garland. So I thought I would use the cats come in the Halloween section right now at Dollar Tree, and then I got the little pumpkin ornaments from the fall section. So I painted the cats in ink, and I painted the pumpkins in agave, and then I'm just going over and distressing them with my chunky brush and some ivory chalk paint by Waverly. I want them to look a little distressed, but definitely black, my little black cats. I think those are super cute. And then I'm going to distress my pumpkins as well. Now, I end up doing little sections here too, to kind of like, you can kind of see the little bump outs to kind of give more depth. And then I go back in with a baby wipe and wipe off the excess. But I'm trying to leave like just a little bit darker areas there to show the different areas between my pumpkins. Now, I don't have a very big area above my coffee bar, so I was thinking 4 would be enough. I do end up adding one more, but again, I'm going to use some of that fun wood bead garland from the Dollar Tree. Oh man, I hope I can find this again. And I am just going to start using the little hangers that came with the ornaments and tying those on to the wood bead garland. I thought that would be fun to tie that in all together. So I'm just kind of counting and seeing if they fit. They're a little crowded, so I just kind of keep working with it. I had done like every 8 beads, and then I decided I wanted to do every 10 beads. And I end up getting the 4 on there, and I go and I try this out, and it just didn't look right. I think I need it to have like an odd number of things hanging from my pennant banner. So I decide to add a starfish. I got these this summer at the Dollar Tree and in with their beachy stuff, and it's just a wood starfish, and I painted that in the color of pumpkin. I know I hadn't used that color in any of my other projects, but I thought it would stand out well and give a little contrasting color. And then I'm just using my white paint pen to try to paint the little circles on. Again, that paint pen, terrible. And then I'm also going to use my ivory chalk paint and a chunky brush, and I'm going to distress my little starfish as well. Now I'm going to go in and put the starfish in the middle of my pennant banner and then readjust all of them. It's going to be the same length, but it just didn't look right the way that I had it before. So I found the middle of my beaded garland, and that's where I'm going to tie on my starfish. And I'm still going to do every 10. I'm just going to do like half of that on the end. So there's only going to be like 5 on each end. Just make it work for whatever space you've got. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Since I need like the black cats to be symmetrical, so this isn't right. So then I gotta back off. And I'm like, okay, so I want the black cats on each end, and then the blue pumpkins, and then the starfish in the middle, and that looks way better, like totally symmetrical. It was kind of a work in progress, this pennant banner, but it ended up turning out really cute. And I'm glad I used the wood bead garland to do that. I think it gave it another little fun coastal touch. And I'm glad I brought the starfish in as well. Okay, this is final reveal time. We have all of our projects we put together here and how they look on my coffee bar. What do you think? I had a lot of fun putting these projects together. I was trying to be really creative, trying to bring black cats and give them a coastal feel. I try to do most of my seasonal projects in coastal because it goes great with my beach house and I love it. So again, we have our little black cat sign that we made earlier with our little blue coastal pumpkin. And then our black cat, that's a rope cat. That thing turned out fantastic. I love it. He's got a little sandy beach complete with seashells and pumpkins. We have our Black Cat Coffee Company sign that we made with a Cricut vinyl from the Dollar Tree and a Target dollar spot sign. And our little black cat pumpkin and starfish. Who knew all those? I hope you enjoyed those black cats. Our next set of DIYs are going to be skeletons, all with a little bit of a beachy vibe. First DIY we're going to do today is just a thrift flip sign. I got this wood sign at the thrift store for 99 cents and it's made out of real wood. So it's super heavy and it's the perfect size for what I want to do. I want to do a hand painted sign. So my first step is to cover up all of that writing that was on my original sign. And the black and the red was a lot to cover, so I think it did take 2 or 3 coats of the ivory chalk paint by Waverly to cover up that on the side. And the sides are already white, so those are ready to go. What I want to do is I want to make a little coastal skeleton sign to go with these great skeletons that I found at the Dollar Tree the other day. So I thought I could make a sign that's just going to go above the skeletons on a little shelf. Now this is the color I want the sign to be. This is the Agave chalk paint by Waverly. It's this beautiful beachy color of blue. And I'm definitely going for a coastal vibe on all of my projects today. So I'm just going to go in and paint 1 coat of that agave on my white base coat and we are going to be ready to go. I'm going to do a hand painted sign, and so I go to my Cricut design space and I cut out a stencil. I get this stencil paper on Amazon. It's really good. I will post a link below. I typed in the word evil under pictures and found an evil that I liked. It cut itself out because my son had my Cricut on my wrong setting. But I'm just going to weed the rest of the picture. I found these great skeletons on the Cricut design space. It's the classic, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And you'll see here in a minute why I chose this design. And I'm going to put evil on the top and then the skeletons on the bottom. Now these skeletons were very detailed. So I did have to go in Cricut design space and use the contour function to cut out a lot of the little tiny dots that were just going to be impossible, but to leave the basic bones and stuff like that. And I'm just going to apply that stencil to my sign using some of this paper, transfer paper. I get this on Amazon as well too, and it works really well. Yeah, my son had my Cricut set to cardstock and I didn't realize it, and so like it cut all the way through this, but that's okay, I don't have to weed it. It wasn't too nice to the skeletons though. So I'm just gonna line this up, my stencil on the top here. I'm gonna have it say evil, and then I'm gonna have those skeletons underneath of it. I think that'll be cute. And I want to paint all of that on there with that ivory chalk paint by Waverly. So we're going to have a nice beachy blue and white sign. So just using that same piece of transfer paper, it works so good you can even reuse it. And just lining that up and pressing my stencil down And we are ready to start painting this little skeleton sign. I'm going to use a little bit of painter's tape to cover any areas at the top there that are exposed so I don't make any mistakes. And then I'm just going to go in with one of those little sponge stencil daubers from the Dollar Tree and use that ivory chalk paint by Waverly and go all over these. I don't want it to be like a perfect hand-painted sign. Otherwise, I might have put Mod Podge down first. I want it to look rustic. I want it to look very coastal. So I'm trying to get fairly good coverage here on my skeletons and on the word evil. And once I get a good coat, I'm going to go in with my heat gun and dry that. I did notice that some of the paint cracked on the skulls, which actually looked kind of cool, so I kind of liked it. I kind of left it. So once I get that good and dry, then I can just remove my stencil, and we're going to have our little hand-painted sign. And it turned out pretty good. There's the word evil and our little skeletons. I do have to go in and just weed out the little pieces of vinyl that are still in there to expose my little skeletons' faces. Yeah, these skeletons had teeth and everything, so I did have to remove a lot of stuff. The contour function on my computer, though, is so slow that it's almost unusable. Do you have that problem as well with your Cricut Design Space? My computer's fairly new, so I just don't know why it's so slow. So just touching up any mistakes I made there. And we have our evil sign, and this is why I made it. Look at these skeletons that I found at the Dollar Tree. I don't have to do anything to them. They're perfect. And I'm going to put this sign up on a little shelf. I got this little shelf in a 3-pack from the Target Dollar Spot. It's a great riser. And then I decided, ooh, I need a little more distressing. So I'm going to go in there with just a chunky brush from the Dollar Tree and those colors that we use, the ivory and the agave, and just weather it a little bit and make it look a little bit beachier. And that is all there is to that project. I love those little skeletons that I found at the Dollar Tree. They're so cute. I've only seen them there once, so I may have gotten lucky. Okay, the next project is we're going to do a little beach scene for our skeletons. So I'm using this frame that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to just paint over the words and the picture of the cactus and just this cashew color just to cover that up because I plan on filling this with sand. It's a frame that just has a paper picture, so there's no glass or anything like that. And I think it's going to make the perfect little sandbox for my little beach scene. Because it has sides, so it'll help keep the sand in there as well. I got these cute little beach chairs at the toy department at Dollar Tree. And they're the perfect color, but I'm just going to kind of distress them a little bit with ivory and a chunky brush just to try to make them look a little bit more like wood. And these are going to be the little beach chairs for our little skeleton family that are going to be having a little beach day. I had so much fun putting this together. It's so cute. And it goes really well with my haunted beach house. These are the little skeletons that I'm going to use. You get 4 on a garland. And I am just going to cut those off the string. And I end up only needing 3 of them for this project. And my plan is to have like 2 of them sitting in the little beach chairs and 1 of the skeletons playing in the sand. So once I get that coat of brown, you'll notice I didn't go all the way to the edges. I'm just doing that so you won't be able to see writing through the sand. And first I'm going to attach the beach chair so they'll be good and secure to the base before I put the sand on in our little sandbox. I'm using just this white sand from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to attach it with just school glue. So I'm going to put down a pretty heavy coat of school glue and just wipe that with a little sponge brush. And then I'm going to go in and put my little skeleton here because I'm going to have him playing in the sand like he's buried in the sand. So I go ahead and glue him down where I want him. And then I'm going to bury him. So I'm just going to spread that sand everywhere where I put glue and put a pretty good coat down. I did have to use more sand on this project than I usually do, so I don't know how well this project will store. It might be okay. It has hardened up a little bit. And I'm just making sure I get a good coat everywhere. Starting to bury my little skeleton in the sand a little bit. And this sand is really fine. It's kind of the whiter sand. But it's really easy to work with. And so he's looking pretty good and buried. Just going to clean up the sand off my chairs there. And then I'm going to use some of this multi-purpose spray glue from the Dollar Tree. And spray that on top of the sand to help glue that down. And the combination of those two types of glue really help you to put sand on signs and stuff like this. Now, since I have that glue on there, I'm going to do a very thin layer of more sand until I get it kind of just the way I like it. I want his body to be buried, but maybe like have some ribs sticking out, his hands, his feet. If I would have had a smaller skeleton too, it would have even looked more like a kid. So it was super cute. But these were the smallest ones I could find. And they were pretty much the perfect size. So just spraying with that with some more glue to make sure that that sand is good and stuck down. And then I'm going to have his and her, like mom and dad skeletons here in the beach chairs. Sitting like that. I thought they needed a little pumpkin. So I'm going to use one of these little white pumpkins that's on a pick or a wire from the Dollar Tree. They come like in a 4-pack, and I am just going to paint that in that pumpkin chalk paint by Waverly. So we'll have a little pumpkin. I like to throw in a little bit of Halloween here and there on this, even though the skeletons are pretty obvious. And once I get that painted, I'm also going to do a beach ball. So I'm going to use one of these ping pong balls from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to use some of my paint pens. I got these paint pens on Amazon, and they're a great selection of colors. I will post a link below for those as well. I absolutely love them. The only problem is that I ran out of the white. I wish I could just buy another white one. So I'm going to do the standard colors of a beach ball with like the red, the blue, the yellow, and the white quadrants. And I'm just kind of freehanding that on to our little ping pong ball. And I thought that would give it a nice beach vibe, having a beach ball there with our little skeleton playing on the beach. And so I got the red and the blue, and now I'm just going in and doing the yellow. The only tricky part of this was trying not to mess up the paint while I was still painting it. And I'm just going to give that a dry with my heat gun, and we have a little beach ball and our pumpkin. Now, I thought that the mom and dad skeletons needed swimsuits. So the only kind of orange fabric I had, I really wanted to do orange because I thought that was very Halloween, is one of these like car chamois from the Dollar Tree. Well, I'm like, well, it works. It's kind of like a really thick felt. So I just cut a pair of shorts for the dad skeleton, and then I'm just attaching those to themselves with hot glue to make little swim trunks for my little skeleton. They're not great, the swimsuits, but they'll do. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach him down to his seat. If I could have figured out a way to make sunglasses for these guys, I totally would have, but man, they were small. I have no idea how I could do that. Now I'm going to make a swimsuit for the mom skeleton, and I kind of just do like a double triangle and kind of put that together, kind of like a diaper, trying to make like a swimsuit bottom for her. And then I'm going to make her like a bikini top using that same fabric. So I just cut a couple little triangles, and then I cut like just a little strip to put those together like a little bikini, and I glue that all together. And then I'm going to glue that to the ribs of the little skeleton. And then I'm going to go in and cut another strip of that chamois, and that's going to be like the strap on the top of the little bikini. And they have their little swimsuits. I had so much fun putting this project together. My son got quite a kick out of it too. So once I have her good and dressed, I can go ahead and hot glue her to her seat so she doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to try to make some surfboards. So I have some of these giant popsicle sticks from Walmart, and I'm just using scissors to try to cut them more in a pointy shape to try to make them look a little bit more like a surfboard. I kind of cut them 2 different heights because I'm going to use both halves to make 2 surfboards for our little skeleton family. And then I thought I would glue them like that right next to each other, like they were buried halfway in the sand behind their chairs. So now all I have to do is give them a little sanding, and then I can go ahead and paint my little surfboards. I kept thinking they didn't really look like surfboards, but good enough. I'm going to go ahead and do the smaller one in this pumpkin chalk paint by Waverly. And then I'm going to do the larger one in ink, which is the black chalk paint by Waverly. Just easy peasy to paint those. And then I'm going to do this little beach sign that I have from like the fairy stuff this summer from the Dollar Tree. And then kind of put that pumpkin in between them. And then I'm just using a Sharpie. And I'm just going to put a very simple jack-o'-lantern face on this surfboard. I thought that would be a nice little touch of Halloween and bring in a little bit more orange to our little beach scene. And then on the black surfboard, I'm just going to use a white paint pen, and I'm just going to write on it, and I'm going to write bad to the bone. I thought that sounded like a fun expression for a skeleton surfer. And again, I hate this paint pen. I got it at Walmart. It's not very good. I just ordered some more, so hopefully. I must use white an awful lot. Then I'm just going to attach those to the little lip of that frame side by side with just a little bit of hot glue. And they fill in that nice empty space back there nicely. And then I just have to decorate a little bit more with my beach ball and then a couple of my tiny seashells for my stash. And then I'm just going to attach all of those to the sand with just a little dab of hot glue. And then I need to glue down that little pumpkin. And what do you guys think? I think it's so much fun. I love it. Okay, my next project, I want to make 3 different signs to do like a coastal skeleton scene. Now, I'm going to use some of these paint trays from the Dollar Tree. It's a great deal. You can get like the roller, you get a brush, you get the paint tray, you get gloves, all for $1. And so it's great because you can just throw them away when you're done. Now, I'm going to use 3 of the long signs from the Dollar Tree. I had 2 of these Beware ones, which were exactly the same size, which I really needed. I'm just going to cover the sign with all the glitter and stuff on there with some of this cheap contact paper from the Dollar Tree that looks like wood, but it doesn't matter what kind. And I'm cutting 2 strips because both of those signs are the same. And then that welcome sign is the same height, but it's a tiny bit wider than the Beware signs. And then I'm going to use that contact paper just to cover everything on the back of that sign, and it will be good to go. I didn't quite get it exactly the right size, so I'm just using a sanding block to go around the edges and tear off any excess vinyl that's still on there, just to clean it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the back of those 2 signs, and I'm just using my heat gun and a scraper to get that tag off. And we have a perfect base for our sign. Now I'm going to do the same thing here on sign number 2. And the third sign I was actually able to do something different, but you'll be able to see that as well. So just getting that one cleaned up, and I'm going to get those 2 signs ready to paint. And you can see I'm going to paint them that ivory there in the chalk paint. And this is the third sign. The paper was really loose on this welcome sign, and it's got the rope like stapled into the back. And so I just pulled almost all of it off with nothing. And then I'm just using heat and a scraper to get the little remaining piece of paper off there. And now I don't have to cover the back. I can just use the front of that sign. And that is super easy. I love it when that paper actually comes off. So sign number 1, I'm going to do in this ivory chalk paint. I'm going to leave the holes on there because I'm going to have all these signs hanging vertically, side by side by side. I'm going to do a set. And I'm just getting a good coat on there. It's really easy to paint the back of those signs. And I do the same exact thing to the other sign that I painted ivory as well. Just touching them up, making sure that none of the brown is showing through. And those 2 signs are ready to go. What I'm going to put on those signs are skeletons. And then in the middle sign, I'm going to paint this agave color. And I'm going to have like a hand-painted sign on this one. So it's going to be like a matching set on our wall. So this is the one that I pulled the paper off of. So I'm just going to leave the rope on there and just paint the top of it in this agave color. And this is definitely going to match that first sign I made, that evil sign, because I'm going to do an agave with a white hand-painted sign on there. I got these little wooden skeletons at the Dollar Tree. One of them is broken, but that's okay. I can fix it, I think. So I'm making sure that I can fix it. And I'm going to attach these wooden skeletons to my little ivory signs that we made. And I think they'll be super cute. But first, I want to make them that beautiful color of agave blue. So I'm kind of testing that. And then I want to fill in the little holes on the top of the skulls with just a little bit of spackle. And then I went to paint it, and then I was like, what am I going to do here? Because they're all attached by these little metal rings, which I didn't really need them to be. So I just go in here, and I completely dismantle both of the skeletons just by pulling the wire rings off. They were super easy to bend and remove. I thought that's going to make it way easier to paint all these little bones because I want them all to be that blue agave color. My plan here is to make a his and hers skeleton, and you'll see why here in just a little bit. So the arm bones, like the top arm bones and the top leg bones, are exactly the same size. So I'm just kind of lining those all up. We got our hands, we got our legs, and we got our heads. And I'm just going to go in there with my roller from the Dollar Tree and give everybody a good coat of that agave chalk paint. And I'm not going to use those rings again to reattach. I'm actually just going to attach all of these little skeleton pieces to our sign. So once I get all of those bones painted, the only thing I have left to paint is the little rib cages for both of those skeletons. I think I was just getting a few drips there from in between some of the fingers. And so let's get a paint on the skeletons, and the hip bones are kind of connected together. And I really like the skeleton. I love that it's wood. You could stain it too. It's so much prettier than the plastic skeletons. And now I'm just kind of lining up to see how the skeleton will fit on my long sign. And it looks like it's going to be nice. There's going to be room at the top and the bottom a little bit. And I can glue almost everything on there except for maybe the arms. So I'm just kind of laying that out to kind of picture what I'm going to do with it. And I'm going to go ahead and glue down the first skull. And while I do that, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the second one as well, lining them up side by side because I want to make sure the skeleton is at the same height for both of them. And that was an easy fix on the broken skeleton for sure. but look at those things before you buy them. And I'm just going to go ahead and attach my rib cage and my hips. Now, I'm not using those wire rings to reattach all these bones together. I'm just leaving a space between them. And I thought about doing rope, but I thought this was the easiest, and I really kind of like the abstract way that it did turn out. So I'm going to have this guy kind of standing with his feet kind of going in. It's going to fit on this side nicely. And then I'm going to go in and do the other one the same way. I do make them have different arm positions just to switch it up a little bit. You can do your skeleton in any position you want. You can have them dancing. And so I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out the arms. They're definitely going to have to hang off. So I thought I would use some of those wire rings, but only on the elbows, just to keep those two pieces of the arms together. And I'm going to have this one be like my male skeleton. I'm just going to have him have his hands kind of on his hips and just attaching the bits of the arm that I can to the side. And it hangs off like that. Now, this skeleton, I want to do the arms like a little different. Maybe this skeleton is dancing. So have one hand on the hip, maybe one hand up in the air. And I thought that was fun to mix up the skeletons and make them a little bit different. So I'm just using the rings to attach them at the elbows again and gluing on the shoulder and the hand. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the arm here that I'm going to have straight up. The finger kind of goes a wacky direction when you do that, but that's okay. Who cares? And we have both of our skeletons secure on our little white signs. Now, you know I have to distress it, so I'm going in with some ivory chalk paint and a chunky brush and just slightly distressing all over on both of my blue skeletons just to give them a little bit more of a coastal vibe. And I really like how these turned out. The three of them together like really represents like a really large art piece on my wall. Like they replaced a painting that I normally have hanging there, and they look so cute together. So just giving a little distress on this skeleton as well. And these signs are about ready to go. I thought about adding some seashells, but I kind of like the simplicity of these, and the color is very coastal as it is. I'm going to use those existing holes on the top and just use some twine from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just using my little Cricut weeder to poke a hole in that vinyl on the back. And I like to tie my ties on the front. I find that they hang flatter against the wall like that. And you have to be careful with these thin signs from the Dollar Tree. They like to warp. Once I painted them the ivory color, they both kind of warped, and I kind of set them on something circular where it kind of bowed down in the middle, and they actually straightened out before they dried. And I'm just using a little flame to burn off any excess fibers, using one sign to measure the other sign to make sure that I get the little hangers the same. And the other sign already had a hanger on it, and so I don't need to make one for it. And I'm just measuring it because I'm going to make a stencil to make a hand-painted sign on this one as well. But I got to distress it a little bit, so I'm just going all in one direction with a chunky brush and a baby wipe. Now, this is the stencil that I made on Cricut Design Space. I will post below the fonts that I used if you want to use them yourself. The first word, till, I did with this like cobweb print that is super cool, but it was actually kind of hard, even as big as I made this. So I was struggling to make sure the little tiny triangles were staying down there on my stencil when I pulled out my letters. And what this little stencil is going to say is, "Till death do us part." I thought that was really funny with the little male and the husband and the wife skeleton. And I had a lot of fun with this. So the till has the little cobwebs on each one of the letters. The next word that I did was death. And I just went in Cricut Design Space and typed in death under images. And it came up with this cool death like in a coffin. And I thought that was cooler than anything I could design. And then so till death Do Us Part. And then I did part like in a script font just to make it look a little different than the rest of them. And so this is ready to go. It's such a long stencil that I did have to cut it in my 2-foot cutting mat. And then I'm just using that paper transfer paper that I love to attach my stencil to my sign so we can do a hand-painted sign. I think that stencils are my favorite thing about owning a Cricut. I wish I would have bought a Cricut a long time ago. I got mine for Christmas last year from my husband and my son, and oh my goodness, I love it for hand-painted signs. There's nothing better. So once I get that down, I'm going to carefully peel off my transfer paper, trying to make sure that everything stays down that's supposed to. And I'm trying not to get like any big gaps that's going to interfere with our paint job. But again, this is going to be coastal, so if there are mistakes, I'll just try to make them look like they were done on purpose. Just make sure it is tight and down around all the letters. And then I'm just going to mark off the extra pieces there with some painter's tape so I don't get any paint on them. And again, I'm just going to use a roller on this since it's such a big sign. And use that ivory chalk paint and just go over my stencil vinyl with that chalk paint. And I did not use the Mod Podge again because it's okay if I have a little bleeding. It's just going to make it look a little bit more coastal. And once I dry that with my heat gun, I can take off my painter's tape and peel off this stencil. And I did really good. The only bleeding I really had was on the side of my coffin and maybe on a letter or two. And I'm just weeding off the excess vinyl from my stencil. Again, I like that cobweb font. I don't know if I would use it again though, because it was a little tricky. And I did end up losing at least one little triangle there. And I also got this little scrap collector on Amazon as well too for my vinyl. And I like it. It's got little slits where you can put your little weeder in there and it will clean it off for you. But I'm just throwing my big chunks of vinyl in there with my finger. And there we have it. Till death do us part. I'm just going to sand that down a little bit. I do have a little bleeding on the right side of that coffin. So I'm just going to go in there with some of that agave and a chunky brush and distress it and kind of make it look like it's done on purpose. And then I'm going to distress all of those ivory letters with that agave just to make it look a little bit more coastal. And I absolutely love how these three signs turned out together. My son really got a kick out of it. I can't wait for my husband to see it in the morning. I'm sure he'll get a nice chuckle. So this is how I'm going to do them. One skeleton on each side, but I want to make one a girl. So I'm going to use one of these bows that I just got on clearance at Walmart, but I don't want it to cover like her whole head. So I'm just going to cut the tails off of it. It's the perfect colors. It's like light blue and burlap and nice and beachy. I'm just going to attach that with a little bit of hot glue just to make this skeleton a girl. Okay, look at this. I'm going to do a mermaid skeleton. Can you believe that they have mermaid skeletons at the Dollar Tree? I was so excited. Oh my gosh. So what I'm going to try to do is just make a little shadow box using this thrift flip that I got at the Goodwill store for $2.99, I think. It's a nice, big, heavy wood sign. And I'm going to do the same trick I do on Dollar Tree signs where I'm just going to cover the back, which was the front, with contact paper. And look at this. I was so excited I bought 3 of them. I can't believe it. Because like last year I had to pay $20 for a skeleton mermaid from the Halloween store. Now my shadow box I'm going to do in that agave color. And you know your girl uses this color all the time. I'm almost out of it again. I'm going to have to go to Walmart. And I am just going over all of the surfaces that are going to be visible. So the sides, it's going to be like just a little shadow box without like, I'm not going to put glass on it or anything, but I just want to do a cool little mermaid scene. But I do need a nice coat of blue to kind of represent the ocean. And this project turned out kind of creepy, kind of cool. My son kind of gave me inspiration for this. He really has the best ideas. So I'm going over the black paint, but I don't really care if some of it shows through. I'm just going to do one good coat of that chalk paint, and that should be good to go. I'm just making sure that I have even coverage all over. And that is just one of those brushes that came with that roller kit from the Dollar Tree as well. And my plan is to kind of just lay my little skeleton in there. She's not very posable, so I think she would be in there kind of nicely like that. I wish I could pose her arm, but I didn't really want to break it off. So then I was thinking, oh, I've got good things. I'm going to use Spanish moss and reindeer moss to kind of make it look like the bottom of the ocean. But first, the skeleton had a tiny bit of shininess to it that kind of made it look cheap and plastic. So I'm just going to go over it with just some matte spray paint just to make it look a little bit more skeletal and a little less shiny. And then this is my plan, is to cover like maybe half of it in Spanish moss. It's that like creepy kind of moss, and then the rest is this reindeer moss I'm going to do in this bright green color. And I'm just trying to simulate like the bottom of the ocean. So I'm going to attach the Spanish moss with just a bunch of hot glue to get a good layer. And I'm not kind of doing half and half. I'm kind of doing diagonals to kind of make it blend in. I use the whole package of the reindeer moss and maybe a third of the package of the Spanish moss. You get a lot of that in there at the Dollar Tree. And I'm just attaching all of my reindeer moss down with that hot glue. And then those little white flowers I got there at the Target dollar spot the other day, I thought those looked very like bottom of the ocean kind of a feel, which is what I kind of thought when I bought them the other day. So I'm trying to make sure that I get all of the paint covered there on the bottom. And we'll have our little skeleton laying kind of like this. And so I'm just going to cut off like 6 or 7 of these little flowers. And I'm just going to attach those here and there with some hot glue. Try to represent like a gnarly like bottom of the ocean, where we have a skeleton of a mermaid laying all creepy like. And then I went and got my stash, which is my treasure table, outside on my Florida room where I put all my treasures that I find at the ocean. And I found some coral, and I'm just going to piece that coral together over here in the corner to kind of make it look like a coral reef. And this is like a really shelly coral. It's got a nice texture, and then I'm going to use those little flowers to kind of cover up the gap in between the two, kind of like they're growing out of the side of our coral. And then I also got some of this like red seaweed from my stash from my table. And I'm just attaching that down with a little bit of hot glue to bring a little variety to the background. And I think she looks pretty. I tried to do eyes, but they were a little too big and a little too creepy. So I decided against that and just left her open eye sockets. But then I was like, my mermaid needs hair. So I didn't have anything to make hair with, so I am just using some raffia from the Dollar Tree and making some crazy straw-looking hair. And this looks cool. It looks a little scary. So I measure out just enough to go down both sides, and then I attach that to the top of my skeleton head with just some hot glue. Kind of pulling it down on the sides. It's okay if she doesn't have very much on the back because she's going to be attached down. I'm going to glue her head down right here inside our little mermaid shadow box. And I'm glad that I gave her hair. I think that looks cool. And then I'm going to attach her down with a bunch of hot glue so that she doesn't fall out, because I'm going to display this up on its side. And we are going to have a super creepy, super cool little mermaid. I can't wait for my son to see this because he definitely inspired me on this. So just fixing her hair. Then I go through my stash and find a bunch of little shells that I think would be good Some of the like not very good shells that I found, just kind of the creepier the better, kind of goes with the vibe of this little mermaid shadow box. What do you guys think? I think it turned out really fun. And I'm just going to sit it on its side like that. And I'm just giving it a little haircut. And she's ready. Okay, final reveal time. Here is our hand-painted evil sign. See no evil. Hear no evil. Speak no evil, with our great skeletons that I get at the Dollar Tree. And there they are next to my haunted beach house, which is from a previous video. If you haven't seen that yet, that sea monster cracks me up. Here's our little skeletons enjoying their day at the beach and celebrating Halloween while they're at it. And we've got surfboards. We've got a little guy here buried in the sand. And I had so much fun putting this project together, and I hope you like it. Put it next to our shark skull that we got at the Halloween store the other day. Isn't that thing cool? Every year we get a new one. And here is our Till Death Do Us part. 3-piece wall hanging with our little his and her skeleton. And I love the blue and the white. I think it goes great with my coastal beach house. And that saying kind of cracks me up on there with my little his and her skeletons. And here's our creepy little mermaid laying on the bottom of the ocean in this little shadow box. Those skeletons were so fun. Our next set of Halloween DIYs are spiders. Here we go. So the first project we're going to do is this cobweb from the Dollar Tree that has a little spider on it. It's covered in this black, shiny, glittery, tinsely stuff. And so whenever I see these, I always think, ooh, good DIY, because once you take off all this little tinsel stuff, you're going to be left with like a perfect size little cage to do your craft. And this is a nice size too, so I think this would make a really good cobweb. Now my plan is to use some of that rope you see off there to the left, the brown rope from the Dollar Tree. And that's not the really thick one, that's kind of the medium size kind of one. So yeah, lots of glitter on there. I got that cleaned up. And I decided that I'm going to use the back instead of the front, because the front had all the little clips and everything that the tinsel was wrapped around. And so I'm going to make that the back and just use the smooth side, which is the back. Now to start my rope, I decided to start by tying it off with a little piece of twine. I did try this approach for one of the rows, and I wasn't real happy with it, tying it on. You could kind of see the twine. It kind of took away from it. So I do end up hot gluing the whole thing with the rope. I thought about wrapping it in twine, but I thought that might take forever. This really did take quite a while too. One reason why is because each one of these little things that you hot glue, they're kind of like arched. So you kind of have to like, like push up and make it like arched like the shape should be for a cobweb. And so that was probably the only time-consuming thing, and just waiting for the hot glue to dry a little bit. So just take your time with this if you do this project. And, I think you could do this with twine. You could wrap everything. I'm trying to think of what else you could use. Maybe that like thicker twine that you can get from Walmart might work too. And it might cover a little faster than the thin twine from Dollar Tree. So I'm going around my first circle in my little cobweb and just hot gluing that down. Now there was a lot of hot gluing on this project, so be careful. I burnt myself twice with my hot glue gun. Like, wow, dang, my hot glue gun is hot. So I'm going to do this same thing, just hot gluing all the way around in that little shape. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the straight lines after I get all of the outer rings of my little web hot glued down. And this turned out really cool. I really like the effect. I really think the rope looks very coastal, very nautical. It's just a really cool effect for Halloween. None of the projects I'm doing today involve black, which, black is like such a staple color for Halloween, and it's a great color for Halloween, but sometimes you want to do things a little bit different, a little bit more your style, and that's what I was going for today with these 4 spider projects. So I got all of my rings cut and glued down. To clean those up, I'm just going around with a lighter and burning off the extra twine. That kind of helps with any extra little pieces of hot glue as well. So I'm going to open another package of rope, and I'm going to hot glue that down to the straight line, just going over the one that's already there, just like a little bump. And that seemed to work okay. And I'm just going to take that line straight across until I get to the end, cut that off, and glue that down. Now I'm going to do the same thing in the opposite direction, making like an X. I don't want to layer the ropes too high. I think one on top of the other is fine, but more than that, it was probably going to get a little crazy. So we got those 2 straight lines. So then I'm just going to do the half part of these other ones so I don't stack any higher than 2 on the ropes. I don't want it to be crazy like sticking out from the project. So I'm just doing those 4 remaining straight line pieces, and we will have a little spider web for our spider. Now the spider that it came with was just a little plastic spider. I'm just going to reuse that just by adding a little paint. So once I get it all put together, I'm just going to go in with a flame again and clean it all up. I had a lot of little drips from hot glue and stuff too, and this helped make those less noticeable, and it really cleaned up the project. Now you can kind of see the black plastic frame behind it, but not too much. That size rope pretty much covered it all. So here's the little white spider that came on it, and I'm just going to mix together agave and ivory. I wanted a light blue, and just go all over the top of the spider with my sponge brush and make him this pretty light blue. My color scheme today for my projects is going to be this color of like light oceany blue, brown like the twine, and ivory. And those colors match my color scheme in my house really well. And it's a fun way to bring Halloween in without an obnoxious feel. My son was really happy that I was getting into the Halloween stuff. He's like, yes, finally. Enough fall. So I get a pretty good coat of blue on my little spider. And now I'm ready to attach him. So I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue and just glue him onto his web, and that is all there is to this DIY project. What do you guys think? I think it turned out really cute. The web took a little longer than I thought, but that's okay. Okay, the next project I wanted to make a web sign. So I'm going to start with one of these little chalkboards from the Dollar Tree. I'm just using some heat and my scraper to try to take the tag off the back because that's what I'm going to work with. I love these signs from the Dollar Tree. They're a lot thicker and straighter than most Dollar Tree signs. And so whenever I see them, I stock up. And they're a great size for a sign too. I really love them. The only thing I don't like about them is they put that obnoxious tag on the back. So after some heat and some Goo Gone, we got that off. Now to cover the chalkboard design on the back, I'm just going to use some of this cheap wood design contact paper from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to cut it bigger than the size, slap that on the back, and it's so easy to go around with your little sanding block from the Dollar Tree and just sand off the excess. And this is a great way to finish the back of a Dollar Tree sign. And I've always done it this way. I noticed a lot of crafters are doing it this way now too. So it looks like it's catching on, so that's good. Now here is some agave and some ivory again. I want to go for that same light blue color that I used on that spider. And I'm going to make this sign all that blue color. I want it to be like a really distressed coastal blue color. And I don't know if you saw, it was kind of quick, but I'm going to put a spider web and spider wood cutout on top of this from the Dollar Tree. So you do have to try to cover that black color. So it does take a little bit of chalk paint, a couple coats to cover the black. I'm okay if like a tiny shadow of it shines through because I do want it to look distressed. And to distress it more, I'm using just ivory chalk paint here and a chunky brush from the Dollar Tree. I go around the edges and up and down, all working in the same direction. And then I follow that up with just a baby wipe and I just distress that. Now, you'll notice some of the paint came off because I didn't put a lot of coats on there of the blue. So I am going to have to mix up a little bit more color of that blue and go back and distress again because I don't want the actual black of the blackboard shining through or showing through. So I'm just going to touch that up and distress all over with that blue. And we are going to have a beachy distress sign. I want to use the same existing holes that was already there. So I just poked a hole in the contact paper with just my weeder for my Cricut. And I'm feeding back in the same string that it came with. I like to tie mine on the front instead of the back. I find that it hangs flatter against the wall like that. And that is ready to go. Now this is the spider in the web that I got at the Dollar Tree. Isn't it cute? I thought I could do something cool with this. I really love these raw wood projects they have for Halloween. I mean, how great for us crafters, right? So I'm going in with just some Antique Wax by Waverly. The brush really wasn't working, so I switched to a foam brush, and I'm just going around the edges. It's okay if I get a little bit on the spider because I am going to, or the web, because I'm going to go ahead and paint that. So I got that all stained around the edges, that beautiful design on there. And then I also want to stain my spider, the Antique Wax by Waverly. So I'm just kind of going all over where the spider is, taking a paper towel, wiping off the excess. And now the only thing I have left to do is to paint the web. Now, I didn't have to be really careful with the border or the spider because I knew I was going to go back and paint this spider web. And I'm going to do it the traditional white or ivory color. But, you know, you can do any of these things, any color you want to match your decor. I thought this would be a nice contrast against our blue sign. And it's going to go with our color scheme of the blue, the ivory, and the brown or natural colors. So I'm just going in with just a little brush with that ivory chalk paint and just being careful around the edges, trying to get it like as straight as possible where it borders up against the antique wax. If I do get some on there, I'm just using a baby wipe to quickly wipe off any excess paint to clean that up a little bit. And this was pretty easy. It just took a little bit of detail time to get this painted all ivory. And I really love the coastal feel of these spider projects. I've never really done a coastal spider. I usually do more traditional with my Halloween. But I have been doing coastal Halloween for a while, coastal fall, usually more coastal fall though. But I'm going to try to bring coastal into Halloween too. I know you guys enjoy it, and I do too. It looks great in my house too. So once I get that all painted, I want to distress my antique wax a little bit. So I'm using some ivory and a chunky brush and just working in one direction, following that up with a baby wipe, and just doing a very light distress on my spider to give it more of a coastal beachy feel. Now I'm going to have a little bit of room left at the bottom of the sign, so I thought I would do a word. So I'm using these wood letters from the Dollar Tree, and they come with one alphabet in each package, so I had to open two, and I'm just going to spell out the word eek. Now I want it to be contrasting against the blue sign, so I'm painting them ivory as well. And they are super easy to paint. They're a little chipped up, but that kind of gives me more of my coastal rustic feel, so that's cool. Now it is time to put this guy together. So I'm just going to use hot glue. I'm going to go around like on the straight line inside so none of that hot glue is visible. And then I decide to go back and also glue down the middle. So I just glue down the middle, the body of the spider. And I'm just sitting that on there and gluing that to the top part of the sign. It kind of hangs off a tiny bit on the side, so I also made it hang off a tiny bit at the top. And that leaves just enough room at the bottom to put some letters to make a word. And I am just going to attach those to the sign with hot glue as well. And I think this sign turned out really cute. I thought about doing a bow or something like that, but I thought that might be a little bit too much. And I think it looks really fun. So just spelling out the words eek. Because that's what I would say if I saw the spider. Dang. What do you guys think? I think it's kind of cute. Okay, another project. This is a spider from the Dollar Tree. And again, it is covered in that tinsel stuff. So I saw it and I'm like, oh, that'd be cute. I could do something with that. So I am just removing all of that tinsel. It's kind of wrapped around every so way. It's kind of got pipe cleaners. Those silver things are pipe cleaners holding it on too. So just working to go around and take all of that off. And you'll see it gives me a really great cage to build a spider. Now on this DIY, I'm going to use that white nautical rope you see over there, that really fat rope. I'm going to use a combination of it intact and unrolled. So I found that tinsel and the lint roller is definitely the way to get that off my silicone mat. That worked really well. So for the body of the spider, I'm just going to go ahead and use that nautical rope all together like that. But I don't think it's going to work for the legs because it's just too thick. So I'm kind of going to do two different ways. So to do the body, I decided to start in the middle. I cut the tape off the end of the rope and just glued down the middle. And then I'm just going to carefully work around. A lot of this is gluing to itself, but I'm also getting some hot glue on that plastic cage so that it is glued down as well. And I'm just going around in a circle to make the circle shape of his body. And that worked really well because it wasn't like an oval shape or anything like that. It was kind of like a perfect circle. So just carefully working around, trying to make sure that the hot glue stays inside. It's not real visible. Kind of pushing it down as I go. And I'm going to go all the way around until I don't have any more room left for the rope. And I want to kind of cut it at an angle where I can kind of blend that in once I get it all filled. And it looks like I can get one more row in there before I come into contact with its legs. And I'm glad that I used the intact rope for this part because it gave it a little bit of a different feel for the body. And this project turned out so cool. Now, it was time consuming. So if you're going to do this, make sure, put on a good TV show or some good music and rock out because this one did take me a while. It really did. So once I get it covered, I just cut off the end and hot glue that down, trying to trim and blend that in as much as I can. That was kind of a hard seam to get down, but I did get it looking fairly good. Now for the legs. Okay, so I'm going to take a piece of this nautical rope and I am going to unbraid it. When you unbraid this nautical rope, you have 3 skinnier pieces of that white rope. And I think that's going to be the perfect diameter to wrap these little legs. So to start, I'm just going to hot glue the tip on the inside of my spider body. And then I'm going to start wrapping that around. Now, when you first start, he has like a knee. So I used a little bit of hot glue to work around that knee to make sure that that stays in place. And then I just continue wrapping down his leg until I get closer to the tip. Then I start using hot glue because I want to make sure that it stays on, and then I cut it and glue the end. Now, I have to do that same thing 7 more times for all these spider legs. So I'm going to speed this way up for you because there's no need for you to suffer. So basically, I hot glue the end, wrap it around, hot glue as I go, cut it off, and hot glue the end. And isn't this cool? I think the spider turned out really, really unique and really kind of high end for Dollar Tree. Way, 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 way better than it started. So I've almost got this side of his body done. And then I just have to go in and do the same on the other side. Now, his head is kind of a complex shape. So when I get to his head, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wrap it with this unrolled twine, the little pieces. But I'm not going to do anything with those like little fangs that you see there. I just end up cutting those off just to make things easier. So we're almost done. I'm kind of cutting about how long I need and then unrolling as I go. Because I needed, let's see, 8 pieces for the legs and I think a couple pieces for the head. Okay, there's all of his legs. And we can start working on the little spider head. So again, I just use the same technique that I did on the legs. I start by hot gluing it to the body. I went around and then I was like clip on those little things that were sticking out. Just use a little hot glue and we have the head. Now I can still kind of see some of the plastic clips, so I did go around a couple more times there. Now this is kind of extra, but I still had rope, so I decided to go ahead and do the underside of the spider too to make him completely a finished product. And then I thought it would be really fun to hang him with a web. So I'm using an extra one of those pieces of unwound rope, just tying a little knot on the end to hang it with. And then I'm just going to attach this to the inside of my spider with some hot glue. And that is how I'm going to hang him on the wall. So it looks like he's hanging from a web, which I think is really fun. What did you guys think about this project? I think this is my favorite. It turned out so fun. I can't wait to get all of my Halloween decorations out and about. It is my son's favorite holiday, and he is going to love all this new Halloween decor. Isn't it cute? I love him. Okay, our last DIY of the day, I thought I would remake this little spider web that I got at the Dollar Tree. So first I'm using some heat and just popping off the little head that was on there of the spider because this is going to now be my back. And I'm also having to use some sharp scissors to cut off the feet that were sticking out from the sides because I am going to use my own spider and I don't need that spider to be on there. Now, I'm going to cover the back, which is all glittery, with some of this contact paper from the Dollar Tree. I just cut it bigger than size and put that on the back to cover up the glitter. Now, normally, I can just use my sanding block and sand. But since this was so arched, the lines, that did not really work well. So I didn't have to end up cutting. So to do that, I just kind of pushed down until I could kind of see the indentation of where the contact paper needed to be cut. And I've never had to do this. The sanding block's always worked, but I think the shape was just too crazy for me to be able to sand that off properly and keep that stuck down to the back. But this is a great way to make the back of your projects look finished. And I'm going to use the back of the spider web and kind of do my own thing and make a little coastal spider web. And you'll see I have some spiders there from the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm going to use an actual spider on my web. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do agave and ivory to give me that beautiful light blue color that I've used on the other projects today. And I am going to paint the back of our cobweb that blue color. Now my plan here is to do the blue background, and then I'm going to paint on a white cobweb. The shape of the sign is great, and it gives me the shape that I need to be able to paint on the cobweb. I love it. So once I get a good coat of that blue on, I am just drying that with my heat gun and going in with my remaining paint to try to give a second coat there, just for any places that the brown at the back of the sign was shining through. Now I'm going to draw on a cobweb. I'm using a white paint pen, but it's not a really great paint pen, and so I kind of just use this for reference. So what I'm doing is just trying to draw a line from opposite side to opposite side. I found they weren't really straight. They kind of arched a little bit, so I just kind of made do. And I was trying to like make those thicker, but I end up going in and painting this more, so I end up using just these lines as reference. So I'm going around the edges of the web. Sorry about my head, y'all. And just drawing those on, just using the shape of the web as reference. Then I was like, this is not like, this doesn't just like stand out like I would like it to. So I'm going to actually paint it on with some ivory chalk paint. So I went and grabbed a little tiny paintbrush and my ivory chalk paint. And then I'm going to use that paint pen for reference, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like a coloring book. I can't really freehand paint fantastic, but if I have a guide there, I can kind of keep it pretty close. So I'm going around all the edges and doing like a thicker line of that ivory. And now I want to do the web part. So I'm going to use those lines that I made with my paint pen for reference and just start painting those on. Doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going for a coastal feel, so anything distressed is going to look cool. So just working around, kind of doing half of a line at a time, trying to keep them fairly straight. And we have that part of our web. Now the only thing we have left to do is like about halfway through there was another web. And so I'm just like kind of guessing where to go and connecting on the sides, arching the line. So I'm just doing a little arch on each one, easy peasy. And that is going to be it for our little cobweb. It's definitely a pretty easy thing to paint if you want to do this project yourself. Okay, just using my heat gun to speed that up. And then the only thing I have left to do on this is I am going to distress it just a little bit. So I'm using my chunky brush and that ivory and just distressing in one direction just to give a little final coastal touch to our little cobweb. And carefully using a baby wipe to wipe off any excess, trying not to mess up my beautiful cobweb lines. And that has a hole in the top. I'm just going to use that for like an existing hanger. I'm just going to use some twine and punch that through the contact paper and just tie a simple knot. Easy peasy. Okay, now it's time to work on our spider. In hindsight, I should have just bought the brown ones that they had at the Dollar Tree. I don't know why I bought the black ones. So I want them to be brown because that's going to go with my color scheme that I'm using today. So I'm just using some of this chalk paint and I think hazelnut. Chalk paint works really well on fabric, and these are that like fuzzy fabric, so I thought chalk paint would be good. So I'm just kind of going all over, trying to change my little black spider into a brown spider. And this worked pretty well. It did take a while to dry that like fuzzy velour fabric on there, but like chalk paint will stick to just about anything. I find I'm not getting very good detail with that foam brush, so I do go grab a small paintbrush to do the detailed parts of his legs, and that worked way better. Now, he's kind of a three-dimensional piece, so I will have to flip him over and paint his underside as well. But all of this could have been avoided if I would have just bought the brown spider. But that's okay. We get another DIY in here. So once I get him all brown, I'm using my heat gun to speed it up, but again, it doesn't dry real fast. But I'm going to go ahead and start working on the bottom anyway. So I am just doing the body with the foam brush and then using the smaller brush for all of the details and the legs. And I really like the actual spider on the web more than the little cute cartoony spider that they had on the existing sign. I might save that head to make something with, though. I'm sure I can find something to DIY that with that. So I get the underbody all brown too, and now he's not totally dry, but he's kind of dry. I am going to hot glue my little spider onto my spider web. Just here looks about good. And it was kind of still wet, so I was kind of afraid to push down too much. Because if I did, it was going to mess up the paint. And it did kind of mess up the paint, so I had to touch it up a little bit. But we hot glue our spider on there. Now I was thinking it needs something. So I got these metal Halloween word signs from the Dollar Tree, and I thought I would use one of those to put a little word on here as well. And I decided beware would be cool. I thought about using it just metal like that, but I didn't think it really stood out. I didn't really think it went with my coastal decor today. So I'm using some Antique Wax by Waverly, and I tried to give it like just a distressed rusty feel and dried that to see if I liked that better. And I found that still wasn't quite enough. I kind of want the Beware to look like wood. So to do that, I'm going to go in and just paint it ivory first to give a good base coat. And dry that. Then I'm going to go in with that Antique Wax by Waverly again and go over the ivory and give a wood effect. I've done this on a lot of projects this fall, and it turns out really good. It makes the projects look like wood. So just working in one direction using a chunky brush, I am distressing across that ivory. And see how it kind of has a wood grain effect already? And I'm using my heat gun to dry that up. The antique wax on the paint doesn't dry super fast, but not too bad. And I'm just using some more antique wax to get that evenly distressed, and we are ready to attach. I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue on about 4 of the letters to attach that and see how it looks like wood now. And it's more of a contrast against our little spiderweb sign. Okay, final reveal time. Okay, here is our rope spider web with our blue spider. I think this turned out so cool, and it's nice and large decoration for Halloween, and it only cost $1 for the web and $2 for the rope, I guess. So fun. And then right next to it is our spider web sign here that we made. We took the chalkboard from the Dollar Tree, we painted that blue. We used this beautiful spider cutout from the Dollar Tree and some Dollar Tree wood letters to spell out the word eek. And we did it in a nice wood stain with a white ivory cobweb. And I think those projects turned out so fun to hang on the wall. And then check out the spider. This is definitely my favorite project. It is so cool. It took some time to put this together, but look how neat it looks. It's so coastal, yet a little bit Halloween. I love it. And I love the fact that it's hanging by a little web too. I think that's super fun. And here's our last project, our little Beware spider web. It looks so much better than the original. And I love the wood look with the blue and the ivory and our little spider that we attached as well. I'm so glad you're still here. Our last set of Halloween DIYs today are ghosts, all with a coastal touch. Hey, coastal ghosts, check out this cute little ghost that I got at the Dollar Tree. He's cute, but he's covered in this glittery, tinsely stuff. So I'm just going to snip right up the middle with my scissors and then just take all of this like Christmas tinsely stuff off. And we are going to have a fantastic little cage to make a little coastal ghost today. And I love these cages that are underneath these things. The tinsel, not so much. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut the hanger off. I'm also going to use some heavy-duty scissors and just snip off the little ghost arms. Are they arms? Wings? We're going to go with arms. And then I decided that I am going to wrap this thing in nautical rope. But first, I want to go in and cut all the little nubby tabs off the cage and on the little ghost arms because those might interfere with the rope. And we are going to wrap this ghost in that nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. And I think that will be super cute. It's going to give me a nice coastal vibe. It's white like a ghost, so win-win. I'm just going to start my rope just by attaching with a little bit of hot glue on the back of my cage and then simply wrap. Now this is why I cut off the ghost arms, is because the main part of this body is pretty easy. I can just wrap around and around. But when I got to the ghost arms part, it was going to cause problems with the wrapping. So I thought it would be easier to attach those after I got the main body of the little ghost wrapped. So that's how far one package goes. This is not the super thick one, maybe the medium size thickness of the one that they have at the Dollar Tree. They're always getting me on the brown ones too. There's so many different thicknesses of the ropes, and I think I'll have the same ones and then I don't. But just make sure you have the same width when you grab several packages of this to make this project. And that's how far my second package goes. I'm just going to glue always on the back so that you can't see it when I start a new rope. And we're almost done with the body of this little coastal ghost. Once you get down here to the end and you kind of got, you know, the slope and stuff like that, you do have to start using a little bit of hot glue on the cage just to make sure everything stays tight. And especially when you get here to the end and you're about done with your rope, I'm just going to keep going until you can't see any of the plastic cage or the opening, and snip off that extra rope and then just attach that down with some hot glue. Now it's time to reattach my little ghost arms, and I'm just hot gluing the little plastic to the plastic that was in there. It's not super stable, but I do something here in a minute that's going to help the stability of the project. And this turned out so cute. My son really loves it. He wants to play with it. So we got both of our little ghost arms put on, and now I just need to wrap them. So I'm just going to start with some hot glue on the back, and then I'm just going to wrap these in this direction just because it is the easiest way to wrap those. Now when you get towards the end, you've got all kinds of different angles and slopes, so you'll have to use a little bit of hot glue on the cage as you go to get everything to stay put. And then just keep going until you can't see the little cage anymore. And you'll be ready to snip off the rope on this side. And we can start working on the other little ghost arm. This project, it was really easy actually. The way that I took it apart and put it back together, I think made this project a little easier. To make that a little bit more stable, I just put an extra piece of rope in there. And then I decided to start the next one like that with the full rope glued to it. And I found that technique worked a little bit better than on the other side, how I started it. So we're just going to wrap this second arm, and our ghost is almost completely covered in rope. He kind of looks like a mummy, a little coastal, but I love the way he turned out, and he's fairly large. So I'm just going to snip that off and hot glue this down. Now this is what I'm using to make it more stable. I'm using a ruler that I got for $1 at Target, and I did have to trim it with my saw a little bit. And I do go ahead and attach twine to make a hanger. This didn't really hang it too well, I do have to end up modifying that. But the point of the ruler is to glue this along the back and to make it more sturdy and make sure that the little ghost arms don't fall off, and it worked really great for that project. Now I went through my seashell stash and I thought seashells would make the perfect little ghost eyes and mouth. So I kind of got two that were kind of the same size for the eyes and a bigger one for the mouth, and I'm just painting those with chalk paint by Waverly in the color of ink. And they really do kind of look like eyes and a mouth. I love how that turned out. And you know, I have a huge shell stash, so whenever I can use any shells, it's always a win-win. And it gives that extra little bit of coastal vibe to our little coastal ghost. And I just go ahead and glue all three of those down with a little bit of hot glue. I think I did lose a little bit of footage, but basically I do the same thing on the other two. I usually record all of my videos with my camera on my phone, and I've been having trouble lately. I can't really see it when I'm filming, and it makes me film it in slow-mo. And so, yeah, frustrating, because then I have to fix it. So this is me fixing the hanger. I didn't like the way it was hanging against the wall, so I'm just using a wooden domino, and actually I like the hanger attached to the head way better. That way the head hangs flat with the wall and doesn't kind of stick out from the wall when I hang it. And here is another little ghost DIY today. I got that little tinsel ghost at the Dollar Tree, and I want to cover it with this cheesecloth stuff. I think they call it creepy cloth. It comes in this ivory color, and it also comes in black at the Dollar Tree. I'm going to leave the tinsel on there, but I don't want it to show through that see-through cheesecloth. So I'm just going to use a couple scrap pieces of felt that I had laying around, and I'm just going to kind of make a hat for him, for his head and his arms, just so when the fabric lays on there, you won't be able to see that little tinsel stuff come through. I don't really want to take the tinsel off because I don't want to leave a plastic cage on this, because I think you'd be able to see that through the cheesecloth. So just attaching those two pieces of felt together with a little bit of hot glue and just kind of making a little hat for this guy, just to go over the top and the arms. And he's a really cute size little ghost, and I do apologize for the flashing lights. This film was filmed in slow-mo on my phone, and I even downloaded an app to try to deflicker this, and it did not work. So I am covering that with cheesecloth, kind of seeing how many layers I needed. I folded it in half, and then I folded it in half again. So that was 4 layers, and I thought that looked pretty good. So I'm kind of trimming that off. Kind of leaves me with like a blobby mess, but I'm kind of shaping it and trimming it as I go. And this slow-mo thing, and the fact that I need my phone for my real job, I was so frustrated that I actually went out and bought myself a real camera. So I do film some videos with my new camera. I don't really have the rig and stuff yet to set it up properly, but I was like a kid with a new toy and I couldn't resist. So to give it more shape, I'm just cutting up underneath the arms and just gluing that to the back and then wrapping the other piece around to the front, just to try to give him a little bit more shape and make him not quite so blobby. I noticed you could kind of see the tinsel through the front there, like on the tummy area of the ghost. So I just take some of my scrap cheesecloth and just kind of stuff that in there and cover that up, because I don't want any of that white shiny stuff showing through. So I just kind of cut and glue until I'm happy with them. I kind of want his arms to be like droopy, hanging down, kind of messy and creepy looking. And I think that looks pretty cool. And so our little ghost needs eyes. I'm going to use 2 of these little round stickers from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to paint them in that ink chalk paint by Waverly. And we have 2 little eyes. I use some black felt because I kind of want an oval for the mouth. And so I'm just going to cut a little oval out of this felt. You can use whatever you have. I don't think you could probably paint on the cheesecloth that well. I don't know though, maybe you could. So I cut out a little oval and I'm drawing my eyes. And I'm just going to hot glue those little stickers on to give us 2 eyes. They're the perfect size for a little ghost. And then I noticed that the felt black was a little bit different color of black than the color that I painted the eyes. So I'm just being extra, and I do take that felt mouth off, and I do paint that with a little bit of chalk paint so that my black colors match. And just trying to dry that real quick, and then I'm just going to hot glue the mouth onto our little ghost. And he's starting to come together. I thought he needed a final touch, so I thought he needed something a little bit more coastal. So I thought I would outline him with some of this brown rope from the Dollar Tree and kind of go over his arms and the top of his head, kind of giving him an outline and just attaching that rope down to the cage with hot glue, and that kind of gave it a little bit more shape there along the top. I'm not going to do the like underneath of his arms where it's flowing. I kind of like that effect. So I'm kind of just doing this down the side of his arm and on his head. And I want him to look, you know, kind of messy with that cheesecloth, but I also kind of want the shape of a ghost is kind of what I'm going for with the outlining with the rope. And then I want to do his sides, so I'm kind of going where like the underarm area would be, and then just doing a strip of rope right down the side that will be visible from the front and kind of give him more of that outline, and just attaching that to the side of our little ghost with some hot glue. And I do glue that down like underneath on the plastic cage just to give it a little bit more stability. Yes, and I'm very excited about my new camera. I think it's going to make filming for YouTube way easier. I go ahead and do the same thing here on the other side. That way I can still use my phone for editing and stuff like that, but then I won't be tied up with my phone for my other job, and I can kind of film between jobs. So that's going to work well. I'm also going to go ahead and outline the bottom just to kind of finish that off a little bit more. Basically, I go around and outline all of his edges with the rope, and it kind of frames him out, except for like where his hands would be, if a ghost had hands. And just gluing that on. And that is the final step in this little coastal ghost. I think he turned out kind of cute. What do you think? Boo, he looks creepy with that blinking lights. Okay, up next I got this cute little ghost at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just using heat and a scraper to take off that little boo. And we are left with this cute little ghost shape. He's already kind of white, which I kind of want him to be, but he's covered in glitter eyes and glitter cheeks. So I just sand that off with my sanding block. And I'm trying to get that adhesive off as well that was holding that little boo on there to give me a clean surface to work with, because I want to make this little coastal ghost project a sand ghost. So I'm going to try to cover it with sand. So the first step, I go in with some ivory chalk paint and just paint over those areas with the glitter and the paint before, just to go ahead and make those whiter. Then I'm going to go over the whole thing with some ivory chalk paint, because I'm going to be using that white sand from the Dollar Tree, and I think you'll be able to see through the sand if it's all not the same color. So I'm going to put a thing down to try to make this not as messy, and I'm just going to go over the whole surface of our little ghost with just some school glue and start sprinkling on that white sand. They also have this in brown, but since ghosts are usually white, I wanted to do a white sand for this little ghost. I did find this was probably the most challenging sand project I did, because it's a hanging ghost, and so I had to try to make sure that the sand does not fall off the ghost. So once I get that on there, I just shook off the excess sand, and now I'm using that spray multi-purpose glue from the Dollar Tree and going over with more of that sand, kind of patting it down as I go and shaking off the excess again. And just do as many layers as you need to do until you are happy with your coverage. I can only use the school glue for the first coat. After that, I have to use the spray glue. Otherwise, you end up with a mess on your hands. So I think he's pretty good and covered. And it looks like I wanted a little bit more. This is why putting the tray down didn't work for me messy-wise, because I continued to add sand and made a mess. Okay, so I wanted him to hold a little sign. So I'm using one of these little wood signs. They come in like 4 or 5 to a pack at the Dollar Tree that says "Boo" really big. Thought it was super cute, just painting that turquoise with acrylic paint from Target. And I'm going to go ahead and make a hanger with the existing hole that was in the ghost, and I'm just going to use twine to tie off a simple rope hanger to the top, trying not to knock off all my sand that I worked so hard on in the process. So just a simple hanger like that. And then I loved how the shells worked for the other ghost, so I'm going to use shells for the eyes and the mouth again. This one I'm going to use these like long rectangular, like oval shaped shells for the eyes. And the only problem I had here was getting them to stick to that sand. They kind of wanted to pop back off. I had to keep trying, kind of digging out a hole almost, so that I could hot glue the shells to the actual wood to get them to stick. And so I kind of had to go deep and hot glue those. Maybe I should have attached those before I sanded the ghost, maybe. And I kind of had the same problem here on the mouth. But after I tried several attempts on these, I got them both to stick pretty well. But then I didn't really think that my boo sign that I was planning for the front of it was going to stick. And so I do come up with a different plan for that. And here's me really going deep, trying to get that mouth attached. And I'm just going to leave those a natural color. I think that looks really pretty with the browns. They're kind of the same color. And I'm like, how am I going to attach this boo? Well, I decided just to use some more twine and just kind of make a hanging sign that the ghost can hold by his little ghost arms. So I'm just attaching some twine to both sides of the boo. And then I'm just going to glue those onto the back of his arms so it looks like he is holding that little boo sign. And then I don't have to worry about gluing that onto the sand. So just a little bit of glue on the back of his arms. And gluing that twine to him. And we have our third coastal ghost project. What do you think? I think he turned out really fun. Even though the sand was very messy, but I think he was worth it. What do you think? Boo! Okay, my next project. I saw this white rug at Dollar Tree today, and I thought, I can make this white rug scrap into a ghost rug. And then I was like, I don't know if I can really pull this off. And then I'm like, well, you know what? Let's try it. So I just flipped over the white rug, and I'm kind of using a little ghost I have there from the Dollar Tree, kind of as inspiration of what a ghost shape would be like. And I am just freehanding a little ghost on the back of my rug with just a Sharpie. I kind of want him to have like a flowy tail, kind of like this one. And I want to use most of the rug that I can. I just want to make a cute little Halloween rug. I think I can probably use this in my son's bathroom. I think it'll be really fun. And then I'm just going in there with a razor blade from the Dollar Tree and cutting that. I wasn't sure it was cutting all the way through, but I found that it was. Maybe I just didn't push hard enough. So sometimes I had to go over these areas twice, and I'm just cutting out where I cut out the little Sharpie. Now, I really didn't know if I could pull this project off, but I absolutely love how it turned out, and I can't believe that I made my own rug. I always see these little rug scraps at the Dollar Tree, and I've used them in my garage and stuff before, my crafting area, but I've never thought to make something with it until now. When I saw that white rug, I thought, ghost, I can make a ghost out of that. And here I go. So I took my silicone mat up because I was afraid I was going to cut it with all of this razor blade. And so make sure you have a cutting mat under you or wood that you don't care if you cut. Because you kind of have to push down pretty hard with the razor blade to get your shape. I get him all cut out, and I kind of realized that one of the arms was a little bit bigger than the other arm. They weren't super symmetrical, and so I do kind of adjust the size on those. But first I'm just cleaning up all of the fuzz and stuff that was stuck to the ghost and just trying to clean up all of the edges. Some of the loose strings just pull right out. Sometimes I had to snip it with scissors, just trying to clean it up a little bit to make it look a little bit more like the ghost cutout that I was going for. And I decided I want a little bump on his tail, so I cut out a little bump on his tail. And here's where I was like, okay, this arm is way too big. So I just draw a smaller arm on this side and cut that out. And he's a little bit more symmetrical. This arm's still bigger, but that's okay. And we have our ghost shape. Now, Julie, what are you going to do to make it coastal? I'm going to wrap it in rope. So here we are. I'm using, this is the thickest brown rope that I could find, and I'm going to wrap that around. But while I'm waiting for my heat gun to heat up, my hot glue gun to heat up, I'm going to go ahead and paint some eyes and a mouth, just using some of this hazelnut chalk paint by Waverly and some of these little stencil daubers from the Dollar Tree. I got the big one and the medium one, and I think they gave me the perfect circles. I was trying to think, how can I paint perfect circles on here? And those work perfect. Okay, it is time to start attaching this rope. So I'm giving it a rope border all the way around, just attaching with hot glue, working one section at a time. And this cleaned up, my rough edges from cutting it, and it gave my rug like a finished feel. It doesn't look like just a rug that's been cut out with a pair of scissors. It looks like a real rug that you would have bought at a store. And yeah, guys, spent $1 for the rug and $1 for the rope, because one thing of rope goes all the way around. And for $2, I made my own Halloween rug. I mean, you can't get much better than that. So I get it all together, and I had the rope meet at the tail. And then I'm just going over with my heat gun to melt any hot glue that was visible on the surface of my rope. Doesn't he look cute? Then I go in and do another coat of paint on his eyes and his mouth to make sure they have even coating. Just sponging that on with the medium and the large size little stencil daubers. I'm so glad I thought to use those. They made perfect circles on there. And chalk paint on fabric works really well, so I think it'll work well on the rug. Okay, this is our last coastal DIY ghost project today. I'm using this happy haunting sign with the ghost on it that I got at the Dollar Tree. That's covered in glitter, so I'm just going to cut out some of this cheap contact paper. I'm not going to even bother trying to do that fancy shape. I'm just going to cover the main part of the back, and just to cover up that glitter, just cleans it up a little bit, and we can work on the back of our sign. And I want to use that existing ghost that was on there, but I want it to be a nice beachy sign, so I'm going in there with that turquoise color and acrylic that we used for the boo on that other ghost. So just going over the back of the sign, and I go over with a couple coats of the acrylic paint to give me this pretty turquoise blue color. I love this color, and this is just like the 99-cent acrylic paint that you can get at Target. I really kind of wanted it to be this pretty turquoise blue, and so I did not use agave for once. Once I get that painted on there, I am using my heat gun. And on the rug project and on this project, I'm using my new camera. So you'll have to let me know how it did. It's a super fancy camera and I have no idea how to use it. And I don't even have the thing to hold it yet. So I just kind of had to prop it up. But I really wanted to use it because I was so mad at my phone. So here is the ghost that was on there before, and I'm just using heat to try to get that glue off the back because I want to use the back of this as well as our little ghost. That way I don't have to deal with any of the glitter on there. And I'm just going to paint this little ghost, this ivory color in chalk paint by Waverly. And it's a really fun shape for a little ghost. For this sign, I really like the structure of the ghost. And that's one reason why I picked up this sign, even though it was covered in glitter. And a second coat of ivory brightens that right up. And I am just giving that a dry with my heat gun, and I'm just going in and distressing my little ghost with some Antique Wax by Waverly and following that up with a baby wipe until I get a nice distress on my little ghost. And the only problem I had with my new camera is it stops recording after 30 minutes. And I had that happen on this project, but I didn't really miss much. Now I'm going over my pretty blue sign and distressing it as well with that ivory chalk paint and a chunky brush, all working in one direction and just wiping off the excess with a baby wipe. Now I got these little letters at Walmart, but they're just too big, and I thought they would be perfect for this project, and I'm like, too big. What if they look on the top? Too big. So I went in my Halloween stash to see if I had like a smaller boo, and I do. It's the same one I used on the other sign, but since it's a different color on this one, you can't really tell that it's the same, and I've got a bunch of them, so I might as well use them. So I just go over that boo in my ivory chalk paint. And just using a little skewer to get any little drips in between the letters. Because it's going to go on that bright blue sign. I want it to look nice. And then I'm going over that and distressing it all in one direction with that Antique Wax by Waverly. And I really like how that turned out. I think it turned out pretty cool. Just using my brown paint pen to draw on some eyes. Just some eyes only on this ghost. And then I'm kind of putting that together how I'm going to like it on that sign. Trying to distress the eyes a little bit. That paint pen was bleeding a little bit because I don't think I let it dry too well. But I do go back and kind of paint over those eyes with some Antique Wax by Waverly, and I think you do miss that when my camera did shut off. So I'm still learning how to use it. I might have to, I don't know, set a timer for 30 minutes or just go ahead and input that video into my computer. I'm not sure. I'm watching YouTube videos like crazy trying to figure out how to use my new Canon camera. But I really love making these YouTube videos for you, and so I thought I would invest in my channel and get some better equipment. So I attached both of those to our sign with just hot glue, and then I am just distressing them back and forth with the ivory and the Antique Wax until I get it exactly the way I like it. And you'll see that I painted the eyes with that Antique Wax with just a tiny brush. I kind of liked that effect better. And then I was going through my seashell stash and finding some seashells that were like the ivory and the brown colors. And I picked out 6 of my favorites. And I'm just going to attach those down the side of my sign with just hot glue. And I think that gives such a beachy feel to the sign. So much fun. All different kinds of shells that I have found at the beach. When I tell you I have lots of seashells, I have lots of seashells. Okay, final reveal time. This is our little coastal ghost wrapped in rope. He's a beautiful size, and I think he turned out so fun. There's his little ghost tail. And I'm really glad I put him together the way I did. I think he looks really good wrapped like that. And I love his little shells for his eyes and his mouth. And here's our little cheesecloth ghost with the rope border. He's trying to look all creepy there. There's his face. And this is my new camera as well, so I'm trying to learn how to focus this. And he looks super cute on this table over here. Here is our little sand ghost with the seashell face and the bright blue boo sign. A little bit of sand fell off along the edges, but I think it actually kind of adds to the little sand ghost, and that way you can tell that he is actually made out of sand. Look how cute his face is. I think he's so fun, and my son said that there's actually a sand ghost on Pokemon, so that is really cool, Mom. And here is the ghost rug that I made. I'm so impressed with how this turned out. It is so cute. Look at that. Isn't it adorable? It is white, so it's going to be hard to keep clean, but it'll be good until Halloween for sure. What do you think about him? It's so much fun. I'm so glad I kind of went outside my comfort zone and to try to make him. And here is our fifth and final coastal ghost project for you today with this fun boo sign, remaking a sign from the Dollar Tree and adding all my coastal touches. Look at all of those seashells. And I think it turned out really fun. I love that bright blue, turquoise blue. Shout out if you've made it this far. Thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. If you've made it all the way to the end, give me that pumpkin emoji down in the comments, and I appreciate you so much. Until next time, bye.